In the 19th century, the Catholics were looking to return to public presence after the dark centuries of anti-papal discrimination. The very idea of erecting a building like a national church for all Catholics provoked opposition and derision. In 1851, between one colonial war and another, and under the reign of a young Queen Victoria, there was even a heated parliamentary debate in which several lords, clearly being ironic, proposed asking in return that the Pope allow the construction of an Anglican church within Rome's walls. Nevertheless, it was obvious the Italian immigrants needed a parish. There were at least 2,000 Italians in London during the middle of the 19th century, most of whom gathered in the area of Saffron Hill, a place where the cost of living was cheap, but which was near the work opportunities of the city. There were also many Irish immigrants who were Catholics too. The key character involved in the construction of the church was Don Raffaele Melia, an early member and disciple of the Society of the Catholic Apostolate, which was founded by St. Vincenzo Pallotti. This was a mission of the new order, indeed the cure of the souls in the immigrant community. Father Melia came to London in 1844 as the person responsible for the Sardinian Chapel, the only authorized place of worship for London's Catholics, because he enjoyed extraterritorial status as a diplomatic office. 3 years later, Cardinal Wiseman, the Vicar Apostolic in London, gave his consent to the project. Pallotti obviously agreed and wrote to the Pope, and it was Pope Pius IX himself who suggested that the future church be dedicated to St. Peter. This was a symbolic choice on an Anglican soil, where the most important cathedral is dedicated to St. Paul, and the independence from Rome was the pillar of the local faith. As the project was supported by the Pope himself, the construction of an Italian church in London, therefore, became an obligation for all the dioceses in the motherland, and so fundraisers were promoted in Italian parishes. But between the project and the realization, there were enormous problems and difficulties. The land acquisition had already provoked objections from the City of London, often pretext, and this, in turn, provoked a widely hostile parliamentary debate. The project was entrusted to the architect Francesco Gualandi of Bologna. He designed a church of enormous proportions based on the Roman church of San Crisogono in Trastevere, which measured 200 feet long, had a capacity of 3,400 seats, and had 5 entrances. However, there was not enough money. 10 years after the land acquisition, Father Melia, along with his assistant and successor Don Giuseppe Fadi Bruno, had to lower his expectations, and a scaled-down project redesigned by the Irish architect John Miller Bryson was approved. The imposing facade with its portico was rejected. The length of the nave was restricted to 3/4 of that originally planned, and inside only 2,000 seats remained. He had hoped to be able to return to the original project in the future, but in reality, Father Melia and Father Giuseppe Fadi Bruno had to fight, even to be able to carry out the revised project. The church gradually took form, and on the 16th of April 1863 it was inaugurated. Despite the reduced dimensions, it was still the biggest Catholic church in the kingdom. Westminster Cathedral was built 40 years later, and the only church in the Roman Basilica style. But even after the inauguration, the work was far from finished. Almost all the internal decorations were missing, as were the rectory and the facade. In 1878, Clerkenwell Road was opened, a work hailed by the Fathers Pallottini, because it gave St. Peter's unexpected space on either side of the church, even though it did cause a rethink of the facade. The church would no longer be on Little Saffron Hill, but crosswise it would be right along the new street. And so the loggia was built on the entrance of Clerkenwell Road, and in 1891 it was completed.